Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Thursday, June 11th, 2020. This is your daily Buckeye Fix. I'm Tom Orr, and today I'm joined by one of the better known members of our staff at BuckeyeScoop.com, former Ohio State captain and All-American Kirk Barton. Kirk, I assume for people who are listening to this podcast, they're probably familiar with you as a player, but I think a lot of people probably don't know you also coached at Ohio State as well. Can you share a little bit about your time doing that?
Yeah, it was I did it in 2010, 11, and 12. So it's kind of interesting because I worked for three different head coaches, so to speak, and saw some great things. I saw some not so great things. I was a part of, an undefeated team and also a team that had more losses than any team in Ohio State history. The 11 team had 7 losses. So it's you kind of get to see every side of the business. You see, a coach get fired. You see a coach get replaced. You get to work for Coach Meyer. Kind of see how he builds a program. It was awesome. I loved it. And, I'll plug that, tonight we're going to release the Coach Meyer podcast on the Scoop World Order, and his interview was excellent. I've also got Jim Tressel coming up this weekend. I'm going to interview him. And, I love the coaching thing, and to me, it gives me a dynamic when it comes to seeing the game that I didn't have as a player. When you work for a guy like Urban Meyer, you learn the game really, really proficiently, and I can analyze much better than I ever could have if I just was a former player. So it's a huge benefit to the community, and it just gives me more confidence when I'm articulating what's going on in a game.
Yeah, I got to be a fly on the wall for your interview with Urban Meyer, and that was really interesting because you guys have a long history, and I'll let people listen to the episode of Scoop World Order to get the whole story of that. But yeah, you have known him since he was at Bowling Green, and yeah, he had some really, really interesting stories, and that's definitely something people are going to want to listen to. I probably don't need to sell anyone who's listening to this too hard on, hey, Urban Meyer's on a podcast, you should probably listen to it. It'll probably be pretty good. Was there a moment from your coaching career that really stands out, like something that really, those were 3 extremely different years, but was there one moment that really, when you look back, you're like, that really was the thing I'm going to remember 30 years from now?
When Jim Tressel got fired, obviously it was a huge moment because it was amazing to me because that was Memorial Day, and I'll never forget I was watching The Hangover 2, and I still have never seen the rest of that movie just because I have such a bad taste in my mouth from that night. And we got some texts, and players were texting me during the movie saying, hey, why do we have a 7 a.m. meeting on Memorial Day? And I'm like, I don't know, but I know that's not good because there was rumors about the George Dorman article and SI coming out, and I knew that wasn't good. And so I started texting the coaches, and the coaches had no idea. It was funny, the players knew before the coaches did. It was like, so I knew it was a screwed up situation. And then we went, it was amazing it didn't leak because, in the world of information, it's hard to stop information. And there weren't any leaks. Like there wasn't anything on any message board. There weren't any people sitting outside the Woody Hayes. Like nobody had it. And, after it happened, it was like everything broke loose. It was on Sports Center, and it was crazy. And a lot of players sadly heard about it on Sports Center before they heard about it, from anyone. There were like a couple of players that were still in town that weren't home for the weekend. And because a lot of kids go to Florida or they go, somewhere in Ohio to celebrate Memorial Day, have a cookout. And then we had an afternoon workout at like 6 o'clock for the guys. But that, and I remember like the first time I saw Coach Meyer walk in the building, and like the sports staff, it was like a dream. I was like, oh my God, people always talked about, Urban Meyer's going to come back and coach Ohio State and all this. But like when he's actually there, it's like, it's like seeing like the Terminator walk in the building for the first time. So it's just like one of those weird, holy cow, this is actually happening. Like he's actually our head coach. Because people, after he beat us when he was at Florida in 2006, there was always this kind of undercurrent of people that always wanted Coach Meyer to be our coach. And I was thrilled. I was praying to God that he would retain me, and he actually did. And I had a great year working for him in 2012. It was tremendously difficult, but I learned more that year than any other year of my football career. I learned so much from him. He's a great friend, and he's a big friend of the Scoop. He said that he will come on my podcast anytime, so I'm excited about that.
And I don't want to spoil anything. People have to listen to the next episode of Scoop World Order to hear this story, but yeah, you had some very interesting interactions with him that first year about your responsibility, and you were just responsible for the tackles, and how much pressure can that be? You had some interesting source material to work with that year, and just a little bit of pressure on you to make it all work. So that's a story that's definitely worth listening to. So check out the episode of Scoop World Order. There will be a link on the front page of BuckeyeScoop.com for you to listen to that. One of the things that is in the news this week is, of course, Ohio State players are back in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, finally starting to work out again. And, it's a little bit of a weird situation where they're working out in small groups and they're spaced out throughout the day. But they've all been out of the program for a couple months. They've all been away, trying to stay in shape at home. As a former player, what is it like to go back in that weight room at the Woody Hayes for the first time after you've been away for quite a while?
I think it depends on who you are. Because if you're like a guy like Johnny Simon or, like if I was in the quarantine, I would have been going crazy making sure I stayed in shape. And, you got to kind of kind of be paranoid about it because you never know when it's going to break. Like that was like the hard part is it's not like, they're like, oh, we're going to be off until September 1st. Like all of a sudden it was like, oh, this stuff's not that bad and we can have everybody back. And, then you start conditioning and it's like, you're going to see in a hurry who's been actually training and who's been, just kind of ad-libbing it, because you can't fake being in shape and training the way that you need to be in shape to play at Ohio State or to play at a major college program. And, I think that for some guys, they're going to look great because they've been, they've been putting the screws in themselves for the last, couple of months, but some guys are going to look terrible. I'm sure there's, I talked about it with Coach Meyer. I was like, there's going to be some programs that are terrible that, they're going to have bad years because guys aren't going to be in condition. And it's like, it's not easy. I mean, I talked with Coach Meyer, the teams are made in the summer. It's like, you got to do these god awful conditioning workouts and these really hard, team building workouts that are brutal. And it's like, that's how you build your team, so missing out on that and trying to ramp it up so these guys are in shape for camp is just going to be so huge because, you can't, like football's a game where you have to have a certain level of training, a certain level of conditioning, or else it's just going to be like injury city, like soft tissue injuries. And, guys aren't going to be, ready to go for the game because you got to train hard to really be ready to play football season.
When you got back and you had been working hard, like how long did it take to feel like you were ready to play again? And then how much longer would it take for someone who's maybe not been working quite as hard as they should have been to really be ready?
Yeah, I think it just depends. I mean, I think every case is unique, because there's some guys that can naturally not really, work as hard and physically they're just blessed enough that they're better. And they have a great, endurance level and that type of thing. I think some of that's genetic, but, I keep thinking of like the bigger guys specifically that have weight issues. And it's like, if they're not, there's some guys like, man, if we let them loose for a day or 2 days, they'll gain 10 pounds or 15 pounds. Like literally, like it sounds insane, but we would have that. Guys would go home for a 3-day weekend and they come back weighing 14 pounds heavier. And it's like, that's a 3-day weekend. Like if it's like like 2 months, then it's like, oh my God, like they're going to be sitting at home, nothing to do, hanging out with their buddies who are, eating, Pizza Hut every night and, ice, milkshakes, like whatever. It's like just eating junk and not, playing video games all day. Like that's all those guys that pack on the pounds. And a lot of them, they don't have scales. It's like a key to, managing yourself when you're playing football or really doing anything is like, you got to weigh yourself periodically just to make sure that, you don't want to jump on the scale and be like, oh God, I put on 20 pounds and I didn't even realize it. Because some of these guys, man, they're so big, they can put on 20 pounds in, a week and they don't even realize it. They're just eating like machines. And, normally we run them to death to get the weight off. And if you're not running them to death, then they blow up like balloons.
Now, this is a question that we always try to ask Ryan Day whenever we talk to him, and we never actually get an answer. And the answer he always gives us is, well, everyone's in the same boat, so, we're just going to try and make the best of it. So here's the question. How important is spring ball, and how big a deal is it that Ohio State missed it this spring? I mean, obviously this year everyone has missed spring ball, so everyone's sort of in the same boat. So they're not really behind. Everyone's just sort of behind the same basic amount. But how far behind is a team that didn't get those 15 practices in the spring?
Everyone's in the same boat, but, not everyone's in the same boat as Ohio State. Ohio State has, a very talented, core returning on offense, including, the best offensive line in the country. Justin Fields, if this was last year and Justin was brand new to the program and he didn't get spring ball, I'd be a lot more worried than the fact that he was so dynamic and so great last year, and he's got a year under his belt in the system. Minimal coaching staff changes. He still has. I mean, Ryan Day is kind of over Corey Dennis, and Urban Meyer's kind of over both of them. Urban's clinicking Corey on how to be a great quarterback coach and how to teach and grind Justin to get him to that next level of greatness. So, when you look around and you've got Chris Olave back and all that talent on offense, it makes life much easier. Now, I know that we're gonna have Kerry Combs and Greg Madison running the defense, but I don't worry as much about on defense as I do like with the QB throw game and with an offensive line gelling, because defense is usually pretty easy to play. And I'm not saying that to take anything away from those guys, but if you're a freak of nature defensive end, they can put you out there and rush the passer. Like if you're a younger lineman, like you got to learn a lot more things than a defensive end does. It just is what it is. Like it's just So I'm happy that we've got a veteran O line. I wish that some of the early enrollees could have gotten the reps just to kind of get the jitters out. Because we've got some really talented kids that enroll early that didn't get the benefit of it. But for me, I'm not as worried about it just because we have such a veteran core on offense coming back.
We've already plugged your Urban Meyer podcast today. That's definitely something people are going to want to check out. This is also Thursday, which means it is time for a Bill Bank Green chat today. The last one was on the day we launched BuckeyeScoop.com. He hit there were around 500 questions and responses in the chat, and that was kind of a marathon chat, but this is definitely a major event on the Insider board every week. I hear that you and Nevada Buck may be hopping on and joining him on there today.
Yeah, I mean, the legendary Bill Bank Green Thursday night chat is something that we wanted to bring back from the old Scout days, and he's done it at Bucknuts a few times, but it's like I'm a big fan of Thursday night. I think a lot of people, it kind of kicks off the weekend, especially in football season, because there's generally, like a decent like ACC game on, and there's an NFL game on, and you can kind of wind down and maybe have a couple beverages, eat some wings, watch the games, get on the scoop, see what's going on, chat with Bank and Nevada and myself, and it'll be a team effort. I'm sure like Kurt will be popping in, and you'll be popping in, and Nick Walker and Gleitman, like the whole team can pop in and just kind of kick it, for the afternoon. Like that's the thing about this thing, man. It's like a club. I mean, you're excited to talk to everybody, to socialize, see how everyone's week was, how are the Buckeyes going to do on Saturday. Like in this case, there's been a lot of good news, like with the kids coming back and working out. Like that's the first bit of positive news on the football front that we've had in a few months. So it's all uphill from here, and I'm sure we'll have some new stuff to report tomorrow night. And I'm hoping to get some good reactions from the Urban podcast, because we've got Tress coming, and then I've got a surprise guest that I'm going to reveal tomorrow, who's I'm really excited about, because people haven't heard from him in a while, and it's going to be great. So I'm excited about it.
I love the fact that you've got two Hall of Fame caliber Ohio State football coaches, national championship winning coaches, and those aren't the ones you're excited about. The surprise guest is the one you're excited about. I don't even know who the surprise guest is, but now I'm excited just based on if it's more exciting than Urban and Tress, that's a pretty good guest.
I think it is, just because people haven't heard from him as much, so he's a little less saturated in the market. So I'm excited about that.
Check out Kirk's podcast, Scoop World Order. That's going to be on BuckeyeScoop.com. That will be on Apple Podcasts soon. That's in the process of happening. You can also check out some of the other podcasts from BuckeyeScoop.com. The Buckeye Weekly podcast that Tony Gerderman and I do, the Gives in the Bank podcast with Mark Givler and Bill Bank Green. We're building our podcast network. The Sloopcast is on there already. We've got some other stuff coming. Really an incredible lineup every day of the week coming at you. And that's just the podcast. That's not the articles. That's not the chats. That's not the Insider board. There is some incredible stuff on Buckeye Scoop. We have great free content available that you should definitely take a look at and get a sense for kind of what you can find at the site. And then we've also got some incredible articles and content on the Insider board that you can access if you're a member. I would encourage you to take a look at that. We're building a great community, getting bigger and better every day. And, hey, Father's Day is coming up, and Dad probably has enough ties. And Dad probably hasn't been going to the office and doesn't need another tie, and probably doesn't need another putter. This would be a pretty good gift for Dad, or for you if you were Dad, to drop a hint to your wife or your kids that a Buckeye Scoop membership might not be a bad thing for Father's Day. So just something to think about as we're about a week out from Father's Day. Kirk, thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us, and we will see you all tomorrow.